movies of 2012. And yes, there are some shit movies that came out in 2012. But the good news is I've seen more great movies in 2012 than worst movies of 2012. So I'm more proud that I've seen a lot of great movies in 2012 than the worst movies of 2012, which proves to us that 2012 has been a great year in movies. But just because I said that, it does not mean there are some bad movies that came out in 2012. And yes, I didn't see as much bad movies in 2012, which that is a good sign, but the movies I have seen, they're on my list. And it's my personal list. If you like these movies on my list, that's completely fine. Do your own. In the comments below, I want to know what your worst movies that you've seen in 2012. So before I get started on my top 10 worst movies of 2012, I just found out I've reached 400 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all my subscribers, for supporting this channel. I enjoy talking about movies to you guys. If it weren't for you guys, this channel wouldn't have been running. So thank you guys so much for subscribing my channel and notifying for more movie reviews and other movie related content. If you want to be my 401 subscriber, do it. Subscribe my channel and ring the bell for more movie reviews and other movie related content, especially for new people who are discovering my channel. We're going to have some fun here, talking about my top 10 worst movies of 2012 and ending off one of my favorite years in movies. So, like Joker says,
and here we go.
Number 10.
So let's start off with number 10 with The Three Stooges. I remember seeing these old Three Stooges skits, and I grew up with them. The Three Stooges used to be so funny in the past. This movie proves to us is that some things should just stay in the past. I get they're trying to bring the Three Stooges back, but when they mix Jackass with the Three Stooges, it's like a cake where two ingredients don't mash up together.
Number 9.
Coming to my number 9 is also a comedy, but a comedy that really fails at doing comedy at its own hands. 1,000 Words. The trailers of this movie describes this as a comedy, but when you watch the movie, this is a depressing drama, and even from the plot of this movie, it is so dark of doing a comedy movie. Poor Eddie Murphy. I love Eddie Murphy in the past. Coming to America too. I'm pumped for that, but 1,000 Words, let's hope that movie isn't that movie.
Number 8.
A Transformers movie that isn't really a Transformers movie, but to me, it felt like a Transformers movie. I know it has aliens, I know that, but that's what I feel about this movie. It's not because it's like about Transformers, it's just how bad this movie is compared to the Transformers movies. Yeah, Battleship is based on a freaking board game. A board game that doesn't need to be adapted into the big screen. But of course they're going to put aliens in the mix to make it interesting. If they don't put aliens, why is this movie made? They're just putting aliens for the sake of making a board game movie.
Number 7.
I would say 2012 has a lot of unnecessary sequels. Actually, now that I think about it, rest of the movies on my list are sequels. I told you this is going to be fun. Ice Age Continental Drift. I'm not a fan of the Ice Age franchise at all. The first one I thought was okay, it wasn't bad. But the rest of the movies just felt so unnecessary. But now we have a 4th installment. They're just trying to make a bullshit plot to continue off the Ice Age franchise. And I just keep thinking to myself, we don't need this movie at all. Especially when we have Peter Dinklage as a monkey pirate. So miscasting.
Number 6.
You want to talk about the worst lighting that I've seen in a movie? Yeah, that movie is called Underworld Awakening. This is a movie that is full of flashing lights. It's like when someone's like flicking a light switch for the entire movie. That's how I'll describe Underworld Awakening. I'm not even a fan of the Underworld franchise. I like the first one. I thought the first one was okay. It's kind of like the Ice Age movies. And I like Kate Beckinsale. I think she's a great actress. But these Underworld movies just felt so unnecessary to the bone. Underworld Awakening just felt like a really bad video game movie that wasn't really based on a video game. Yeah, that's not a good sign.
Number 5.
Alright guys, up to my top 5 worst movies of 2012. Now these 5 movies aren't as worse as the previous years of movies, but they're still piles of shit. And one of those is the conclusion to a franchise that I clearly hate, Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2. I'll give this movie credit. At least it isn't worse than Part 1. I'll give this movie credit. It literally tries to be a good finale, but that's the only compliment I'll give to this movie. It's a battle movie that just really bores me at its own hands. And maybe it's because I'm not a fan of the Twilight Saga. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I hate all the Twilight movies, so I had to hate Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2. And I tried to give it a chance, but every time I see these movies, I just felt like the acting is terrible, the characters aren't even that good, and the finale just makes no sense whatsoever. Especially that Jacob is trying to... Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That's just weird.
Number 4.
Another unnecessary sequel that we don't even need. Taken 2. We got Oliver something. In my opinion, one of the worst action directors that I've seen in a movie. Literally, his direction with this movie is just cut shots, shaky cam, cut shots, cut shots. That is literally the action in Taken 2. But the biggest point of Taken 2, it's just unnecessary. We don't even need a trilogy of Taken. The first movie was awesome. It's one of my favorite movies, and a sequel to that movie, I was really interested. And it's just, the story of this movie is completely wasted in its own hands. It's trying to be like the first Taken, but just the other way around.
Number 3.
Oh yes, another sequel on my list. What the odds? This should be called the worst sequels that came out in 2012. Because there's so many of them. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. This time a sequel to a shit movie that I hate. And this movie makes the first movie at least better. My god, this movie. The directors of Crank directed this shit. And the first Crank was silly, it was dumb, but it knows what it is. But especially they're making a story about a guy that turns into a flaming skull with a motorbike. One of the most badass superheroes I've ever seen in comics, and it made that stupid in a movie. Like literally, the first thing you see in Ghost Rider, you just see him like doing this to this guy, it's like that's literally the first appearance by Ghost Rider. This is one of those superhero movies that I want to see a reboot of.
Number 2.
Alright, 2 and 1. These movies I hated. I would describe these movies as the worst movies ever made. Not as worse as the previous years so far, but they're still piles of shit. My number 2 comes from a franchise that I just want to pound it to the ground. One of the worst video game franchises I've ever seen, and now made its 4th installment. Resident Evil Retribution. Why? Just why? Literally, everyone doesn't like the Resident Evil franchise. I can't think of one person that likes it, and they still make those movies. How? In my opinion, Paul W.S. Anderson is one of the worst directors that I've seen in movies. Everything about this movie was just confusing, it was dumb, it was unnecessary to bring characters from the previous movies for no freaking reason. The script in this movie is terrible, the direction they took is terrible, but it's not as worse as number 1. Let's get into it.
Number 1.
Coming into my number 1, the worst movie that I have seen in 2012. This is a movie with not just one of the worst movies I've seen in 2012, but it has some of the worst titles that I have ever heard in a movie in general. Piranha 3 Double D. Yeah. Who agrees to me that this title is awesome? Hopefully all of you disagree. Because I completely disagree with that. This is one of the dumbest titles that I've heard in a movie. But we're not going to talk about the title. We're going to talk about why is Piranha 3 Double D the worst movie that I've seen this year. Everything about this movie is just straight dumb. Unnecessary. It's trying to be one of those porno movies with piranhas eating flesh. Like I said before, 2 ingredients in a cake don't match together. It looks like they want this movie to be a porno movie because of the title of the movie. And I'm not even a fan of the piranha movies. I hated the first Piranha 3D. It's exactly the same, but this movie made it worse. It made it stupid. And why is David Hasselhoff in this movie? Trying to do this whole Baywatch bullshit? And even when the piranhas eat people, they just make that so stupid and unnecessary and boring as shit. Like, it's supposed to be like, oh crap, but no, I was just laughing my ass off. That's how stupid and terrible Piranha 3 Double D is. Just one of the most unnecessary sequels I've ever seen. But one of the worst titles? Who came up with the idea with this title? And who came up with the idea to make this movie? To get guys see boobs in 3D? Yeah, I saw this shit. I didn't see it in theaters, I saw it at home. And I'm glad I did. Because if I did saw this movie in 3D, it would have been embarrassing. So guys, that is it. 2012, my favorite year in movies, over. So now we're going to move on to 2013. Not my favorite year in movies, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's as popular as the previous years I talked about, but that's when it's going to get fun. So thank you guys to all my 400 subscribers for subscribing to my channel. Make sure you guys follow me on Facebook, status, Instagram, Twitter. Let me know down below what are your top 10 best and worst movies of 2012. I want to know in the comments below. Make sure you guys follow me on Facebook, status, Instagram, Twitter. Keep contacting me, and thank you guys for watching, and have a nice day.